Well, a very good morning on fairly chilly April morning. It's 3 degrees and I'm just starting off from Linn of Dee. She's just behind those trees on my lodge estate. I am back for the summer. Wasn't certain for a long time, but I'm thrilled to be back in the Cairngorms for a summer season as seasonal ranger here on the estate for the National Trust for Scotland. And I'm into my, oh my god, I just finished my 4th week already of a 7-month contract. So time is flying by. My objective today is a hill called Sgor Mor, which is this, which doesn't look much from down here. It's a big, I think it's a corbett, is it? It's a big whale back of a hill, heathery, boggy on the top, quite flat on the top. It's about 4 kilometres long from one end to the other. So it's not particularly high, I think it's just over 800 metres. But it's mostly through increasingly long heather like this. So there's no one way up this hill. It's essentially just picking your own route. This is something you actually won't see a whole lot of on this estate. It's one of the few fences actually we've got. This is an electric fence and it is to keep deer out, which is why it's so high. And you've got these, you sometimes see these, canes or strips or orange netting put on fences. If you ever wonder what that's for, it's so that birds like black grouse, capercaillie can actually see the fences. See the obstacle otherwise, because you get a lot of bird deaths when birds, grouse, fly into fences. That's what that's for. Anyway, fences. One of the first things the trust did when it bought the estate back in 1995 was set about removing a lot of fences, 30 miles of fence. The estate is split into 2. I don't know if I've said this before in one of the other vlogs up on Craigvallig, but the estate is split into 2. When it was when the trust bought it, it was an anonymous donation that was given up, and there was a condition stipulated that it had to be run as a sporting estate and it had to be run for conservation and also public access. So there's a bit of a dilemma there, a bit of a quandary. How do you manage an estate in Scotland for sport and for conservation? And that's still a debate that's raging now. And what they decided to do here was to split the estate into 2, into what's called the regeneration zone, which is this behind me, where it's pretty much a 0 tolerance on deer numbers, and you can see the saplings and trees and the forest is coming back, not just Scots pine but everything, rowan, birch, aspen, alder, it's all coming up. And then on that side it's the moorland zone, and that's sort of the sporting interest, where in the summer we have grouse shooting, not driven grouse shooting, it's walk-up grouse shooting, and hunting for stags and hinds later in the season. So that's what that estate is managed as. The deer population on this side is about 1 deer per square kilometre, and on that side it's about 9. Overall on the estate we're aiming to have about 1,650 deer across the whole estate, and at the last count it was about 1,600 in this side and about 1 per square kilometre, so I think it was about 30 deer on this side. So I mean none, this is a huge place. Sort of this side is about 14,000 hectares I think, so it's big. It goes all the way up into the plateau, Glenderry, Glenlouis, Glencoich, so only 30 or so deer in that whole area, which is why the woodland is coming up. But this is one of the few fences we have left, an electric fence which starts down towards the Linn of Dee, just beyond down there, and then comes all the way up and goes up Sgor Mor. Actually it goes and it ends, it's not an enclosed fence, it just ends on the hillside, so it's more of a corral I suppose, a sort of just trying to assist the regeneration of the woodland on this side. One of the interesting things though is that it's not just enough to cut off grazing by deer and hope that the trees are going to come back, because certainly what I found up in Craigvallig up there, and I suppose it's illustrative of what's going on across much of the estate through the old pine woodlands, is that just because you've got big trees, it doesn't mean that they're going to cast seeds. Well, they do cast seeds, but it's like trees are like people. You get to a point, you're too old to reproduce. Sad. And that's what's happening in some parts of the estate. You've got these wonderful big old trees, and it's sort of, I think originally there might have been an assumption that it's just enough to stop grazing from deer and the trees will come back. But there's plenty of seeds falling, Scots pine seeds falling, but they're collected every year in buckets, what's called seed rain, and they're cut open and looked through a hand lens to see if they're actually viable, and a lot of them aren't. So these big old trees, in a way, it's almost too late for some of them, for some parts of the estate, so that's why there was always a consideration that maybe you'd have to plant some more. But the last 5 years have shown that stuff is coming back. But I think it does indicate that it's just the right time to be doing it, and if you left it much longer to do this sort of thing here, chances are certain parts of the estates, the saplings just wouldn't come back. These aren't that old, not as old as some of the ones that are further up the hill on Craig Valley, which is through those trees over there on the other side. Over in what's called Mar Forest over there, these aren't as nearly as old as those. Oh, what we got up here? What we got? It looks like, can't make it out. Is that a pair of hen harriers? Yep, looks like a pair of hen harriers. Oh, it's a slog. It's always fine coming down, isn't it, in heather, but going up when it's this thick. The good thing, I suppose, is the higher you go, it does very quickly get shorter. Well, that's us leaving the woodlands behind and up onto the open moor, where it's going to get, a lot breezier, a lot colder. It was going to be very keen southeasterly wind, which is coming from a cold direction this time of year, so it does feel pretty cold. The forecast today was for sort of 30-40 mile an hour winds up on the Munros, so I did ponder going up, I don't know, Benvironment or Carn of Aim, even Benvironment today, but I didn't really fancy struggling with wind, and I wanted to film something too, so I wanted it to be quite a more comfortable experience, hence going for something smaller. Getting a nice view of Glen Dee. This is Glen Dee opening up here, all these woodlands down here. This is the Linn of Dee, so the bridge is just down there, just in there, the bridge at Linn of Dee at the gorge, and then Mar Lodge is way up in the flats by the river over there. It is a weekend, it's a Saturday, and we're in the holidays, Easter holidays, so the other reason for coming up here, this particular hill, is, well, a few reasons. Firstly, I've never been up here before. Second, I quite fancied staying away from the crowds today, but also I was up a hill called Cairngorms, and I did a very quick bite-sized vlog from there the other day. Cairngorms is this one here, and it was a beautiful day. It was 3-4 days ago, not a breath of wind, it was warm, incredible. And getting up there and sitting, and suddenly this view opens up at the plateau, looking right up the Larry Grew, but not quite, because this hill, Sgor Mor, is in the way. So that's when it occurred to me, I really should go up there next. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm really excited about getting up the top, up here, and seeing this majestic view of the plateau. And I wanted to get up earlier in the season rather than later, while there's still quite a bit of snow up there, so it still looks the part. The problem with heather, even shorter heather, is it all kind of grows down the hill, so your feet catch it because it's growing down. Ugh. It's not surprising really that I get through so many pairs of boots, and a pair of boots only lasts me one season. and they get endlessly scuffed by all this stuff. And the other quirk of this sort of habitat and working in this sort of landscape is you get home at the end of the day, you take your shoes off and it's full of these. My flat, the carpet in my flat is just full, covered by this. I have to keep vacuuming it every other day. Even with gators, it seems it gets into everything, these heather seeds. Can't complain. It's a wonderful office. Oh, and look, first snow patches. Always nice to see snow lingering. Quite soft, granular. It is spring after all. That wind's starting to get cold. It is still cold. It still feels pretty normal for April, like it should be. With frosts in the morning, cool mornings, a bit of warmth from the sun in the afternoon, and then frost again. Kind of what you'd expect this time of year. And this snow has only really come about in the last 2 weeks. We had a very heavy snowfall, when was it? A week last Wednesday. And we had about 6 inches down at the lodge around Braemar, and then just 100 or 150 metres up the hill behind the lodge it was easily a foot. And over at Glen Mor they had 40 centimetres, and the Lex I think had 50, half a metre. Most of it's gone, but certainly at a high level it's still here. You can see how all of a sudden, once you get up into the really high exposed places where it's a bit wetter, the heather's gone just like that. It's just grasses, sedges, but it is quite waterlogged still, and it has been very dry again. We're currently under, if you believe it or not, extreme fire risk across this part of Scotland, northeast, because all this dead grass and heather from last year can ignite very easily. I think people don't really appreciate how easily this stuff goes up. I think we're in spring, it's cold, it's been raining in the last 2 weeks, although not much. I think people think there's no danger, but we have a bit of an ordeal trying to persuade people that there is a danger. Oh look, a solitary pine. Well, the summit of Sgor Mor is over there. It's 813 metres, and it's further than it looks. And then you've got Sgor Dhu, which is, I think is that this one? It's this summit. This is all the big long ridge. Although clearly ridge isn't the right word for this. Bogginess. But it's not too bad. Like I say, it has been dry. Well, this is fun. Pot marked with the tiny little lochans, little ponds, little pools. It is like walking over a massive sponge. Well, it's quite kind on the feet, but that bit of resistance makes it hard on the knees. Slow going. It's a kind of terrain that would be much easier if it had, you've had a dump of snow, then it had thawed and refrozen, and it was a bit hard packed or wind blown. That'd be perfect. You could just scoot across. This is spongy. The natural line is to sort of go further up there, but I wanted to come over this way and just sort of aim over here, just on the off chance that I can see up Glenderry, which heads up that way. Well, that is surely worth the price of admission in itself. It's worth coming up here just for this view up Derry. This is Glen Louis, along here. That gash over there, that's Clash which goes through to Glencoy. And this is the way that people walk in when you park at Linn of Dee and walk up to Derry Lodge, up this glen. And Derry Lodge is nestled down in there, and so is Bob Scott's Bothy down there by the river. And of course that's Glen Derry going all the way up to Benvironment at the head and going through the Larrigan Louis, which would take you through to Sgor Mor, I suppose, or Tomintown if you veer off to the right once you get to the Fords of Arn. And Derry Cairngorms up there. It's lovely. It's cold though, it's cold. The good thing about coming up this way round and coming around anti-clockwise is that the winds, for the most part, is behind me. It would be really cold if I was walking into the wind. That's wonderful. You know, every time I come somewhere new on the estate, I keep finding what I think are my favourite views. Certainly up in Craig Valley, the view up Glencoy, which I showed you last year, I mean that's astonishing. And then the view up Cairngorms, that was a contender for finest view, but I still like to get a view down a glen, which is why I really like the one from Craig Valley, because it looks up Glencoy and you can see all the forest coming back. And this one that's pretty impressive. It's got an almost alpine feel to it. I think that's what we're starting to get now. It's something I said in the Derry Cairngorms blog. Climbing up Cairngorms, you go through an actual natural tree line now, and it's starting to feel more like the kind of experiences you might get, you know, sort of more alpine areas. And it has this appearance to it. It doesn't feel quite like anywhere else in Scotland, I don't think. I think once you climb up above these old pine woodlands, especially this time of year when you've got nice bright sunshine, blue sky, and still got the snow, it really does feel like a much bigger mountain environment than it probably is. It's lovely. So it's a new contender for favourite view on the estate. But as ever in Scotland, the thing that breaks that illusion, if for one moment you're sort of actually going to believe that you're somewhere sort of in an alpine environment and you're being carried away to somewhere else entirely, the thing that always snaps you back rudely is the weather, of course, and that wind. Oh, it's cold. It is cold, and there's always that keen wind. I should have been up here. It would have been amazing to have been up here on the day I was at Cairngorms, because that would have been, there was no wind at all. It's getting a bit brighter. It's certainly not as sunny a day as they were forecasting. Oh, look. Plenty of pines now, you see, coming up. Certainly this whole ridge that comes up from Derry Lodge all the way up here. If you go down in the Glen Louis Beg, you can see them sort of spreading all the way up the ridge now. You can see how much shorter the heather is up here. All of a sudden, it's very nice walking. Yes! And there's no one here. Where is everybody? This is nice when you start walking on these higher plateau areas. It's almost desert-like. Certainly it all looks very dry. And it's not just lack of rainfall, the constant wind dries things out, desiccation. Very challenging environment for anything to grow up here. Well, this is the summit of Sgor Mor. Excuse me. Not the summit proper. Sgor Mor is that one over there in shadow with all the snow patches on. Let's get out the wind a bit maybe. Oh, that's better. What an astonishing place. First time up here, it is not disappointing, it's incredible. Let's just say a little bit about what we can see while we're up here. That, of course, over there, that's Benvironment, the 11th highest hill in the country. And then that's all the way up Glen Derry, up to Benvironment up there, Derry Cairngorms. That massive bulk over there is Ben Macdui, and that ridge up there, that's Sgor Mor, and as you can see all the way through there to Bray Riach, through the gap between Benvironment and Cairngorms, which is that big hill there. Then over here we've got that very distinctive dark mass over there, which is Devil's Point, and then we've got Cairngorms and Sgor Mor behind it. All the way over there through that gap, that's Geological, which goes through to Linn of Dee, those very remote Munros out there. If you go all the way through there, you can get all the way to Sgor Mor, but it goes down to Glenfeshie. That is our top we're aiming for. Over there we've got Anscarsuk and Cairngorms, and all the way over there, that hill in the distance, that's Ben Aglow. You can just see the river through there. That's going towards Bynack Lodge, which is over in there somewhere, and that's the route that goes all the way through Glentilt, takes you all the way to Blair Athol. So a massive view, nice place to stop I think for a bit for some sandwiches, maybe. Haven't had anything to eat really since I started, but I've been going a long time, I've been faffing a lot, so I think it's sensible to stop for a bit. Over there, greyness over there, completely different to what was forecast. Certainly the Met Office had Bray Mor under unbroken sunshine from early morning until 3-4 o'clock. Clearly that's not the case, but it's fine. The tops are free of cloud, that's the main thing, and it's dry, which is nice. I've seen a few write-ups of this hill, people saying about this traverse along this ridge, about how they're happy that there are tors up there, which is quite characteristic of granite country, to break up what they call the monotony, which, I mean, it is bleak, isn't it? I mean, it's a very untamed, wild, desolate place, and if you're up here in bad weather, bad visibility, you'd really have to have your wits about you about how to navigate and find your way around. But when the ground's like this and the heather's short and it's easy walking, it's a joy. I don't find it monotonous in the slightest when you've got this to look at. Wonderful. Still further than it looks so. This is an intermediate hill here with these two crags in the sun, and the actual summit is over there, so it's still a fair way to go. You certainly see how there's all those slopes are north facing, they're all brown, whereas everything that's south facing is white. Clearly that means that snow's not going to last long, because it never does on south facing slopes. But again, it's been a funny winter. There's been quite a notable lack of storms, so no snow's been brought in on southwesterly winds, or west or northwesterly. So east facing slopes, north facing slopes, where you get the snow that lingers longest through the summer, because it tends to be the darkest places. There's not a huge amount there, so it might look nice now and snowy, but it'll be interesting to see what snow, if any, survives through the summer, because all this is south facing, because this last load of snow we had in the Cairngorms, it all came in on a north wind and northeasterlies, which favours this part of the country over the west, but it does mean that it's all dumped on the slopes that face the sun and get the most warmth during the day. It's getting windier. I think it said it was going to get windier throughout the day. I made the sensible choice though, coming out something smaller today. Not quite as cold as it would be up there today. an oddly sheltered spot. Seems a good a place as any, good chance as any to just show you. We're getting a nice view up the start of the Larrick Grew now, which goes up in that gap, going up the way, up that way. It's amazing, isn't it, how Devil's Point sort of just hides and merges into the bigger hills next door. It has a much more pronounced profile when you're down at the Bothy and down at Curragh and coming down the glen. It seems like a proper hill in itself, but from here it just looks like it's a big cliff, part of Cairntowel. Yeah, really nice view up there today. Seems like the sun's coming out again. Well, not far to go. It's just up there and those lovely smooth, I'm assuming glacial scoured, smoothed rocks at the summit. That's it. Oh, now look, this is interesting. Look what we've got here. The top of Sgor Mor. It's quite a view. And all the way over there, that big flat area is where we came up, and you can see why it's so squelchy and spongy. There's no drainage at all the way up under here and all the way along the ridge, and the walking got progressively better and drier as we came along. Time for some shelter now, I think. Oh, it's not a huge shelter, but it's very welcome. Oh man. Brightening up again. Alright, coffee and cake. Cheers! Windy! Well, this is the only shelter on the hill it seems. It's certainly not much windier. Just in the time it's taken me to get up here, I mean, it's really gusting now. On the way over here, just on the rocks, just over there, and there's some more over there as well on this rock over here. Some very curious holes in the rock, which I knew they were up here and I've seen them elsewhere, and I was looking forward to actually telling you about them. But it's way too windy to film, even with my external mic on. So I'll get down into when it's a bit calmer down there, then I'll tell you something about them. It's tempting just to sit here actually, it's quite nice now the sun's out. I do need to get down. For the meantime, just enjoy the view. Sunny. The forecast has come good, nice and bright, glare coming off the snow. I can already feel it getting warmer just getting off the top. Complete change in the weather from when I was up there. Look at it now. It's like it's summer up there. It's amazing how quickly it changes there. It's that sort of day when getting into, even though it's cold, when you've got the wind as strong as it is, with this sun, because I think we're only 8 weeks away from longest day, so this is a strong sun now. This is when you come off the hill with the wind and the sun. I mean, you really do feel it on your face. I made sure I put my sun cream on first thing before I even went out this morning, because it's a strong sun now. I love this landscape here of all these rocks which have got, I think I'm right in saying these are striations from glaciers, I think, but all these smooth rocks and all these rocks that have just been left deposited by the ice as it's travelled and as it's melted. Just balance, just sitting here wonderful. Oh, it's much calmer here. I can almost hear myself think again. Actually, if anything, it's getting too warm now. Oh, yo-yoing weather in the spring. That's better. Oh, what a beautiful day. Old Sheelings, which I'm assuming were summer residences where they brought cattle for the summer to graze. All these glens, Glen Louis, Glen Dee, Glen Louis Beg, they all had people in them, like most of Scotland did. Now there's just these remnants of old farm places, old cottages, old Sheelings. And that's us back on the track that goes all the way to Whitebridge. If you go that way on this track, it takes you to Bothy, and you can veer right and sort of circumnavigate the whole hill, the whole of Sgor Mor. If you go up the glen and then turn right, it takes you down Glen Louis Beg. I think the Walk Highlands route for this hill has you come off the summit and go north, so essentially going back over the hill that way. That way, if you're wanting to sort of spend some time in some of the pine forests, that's the best way to go. It's quite a boggy, long, well, like much like this was, a bit of a long boggy descent north off the hill, but it does take you down into the pine woodlands in Glen Louis Beg and brings you out at Derry Lodge. But we're not doing that, we're going to Whitebridge and then back on that track. Well, this is the Chester Dee. The River Dee comes and tumbles over these waterfalls. And I think it's 3 pools. It's a really nice spot. And the water gets it's quite deep in each pool, deep enough to be swimming and sort of diving down and everything. Really nice place to come for a bit of swimming, which I did. It was such a warm summer last summer. It's one of the places I came out, but it takes about 40 minutes, maybe half an hour to sort of pedal out, or an hour to walk out from Linn of Dee. But it's worth it when you get here. And when you get here, you're kind of a bit hot and sweaty, so the best thing to do is to jump straight in. Anyway, it's a nice place to rest for a little bit. Out the wind. Just need the sun to come out again. There you go. So now the sun's out, I think you can kind of see the attraction. I mean, it'll be freakishly cold just now with all the snow melt and still getting frosty nights. But up here in, when was it? June, July last year. I mean, it's not as turbulent as this because it's been so dry and there wasn't much water really. But it's still deep in each of these pools, and it's heaven. Really, really nice. Lovely spot. Anyway, I'm gonna dip my feet. I've got a bit of foot pain. I've got, what's it called, plantar fasciitis. So I get the tendon in the bottom of my foot gets quite tight and gets quite sore. So the best thing to do is sort of ice it and massage it. So I'm gonna dip my finger in the river for a bit. There he goes. Oh God. Oh, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold. You can't quite believe that you could come in here in the summer and sort of swim around in here and not feel cold, but oh my God, that's cold. Ooh. I did the same thing, when was it? After being up Cairngorms the other day, because the feet do get sore. And it just helps to sort of, went down to the Dee at Mile Lodge and just stuck my feet in, and it was, I wouldn't say it was bliss, but I kept them in for 10 minutes somehow. It really hurts to start off with, but you do get used to it. Ooh, it's really cold. Oh my God. So there was a time when I just wouldn't have done this. I mean, like last year, sort of going swimming a lot. It was only ever about going up Munros and going up big, massive mountains, and then getting there as quickly as possible and getting off as quickly as possible, and not hanging around at lovely spots like this. I just would never have done this back in the day. So it's so nice to just sit here and chill now, and so I've got plenty of time. Driving back to Fife tonight, so I'm in no rush. It's just lovely. Do need to keep taking them out from time to time, but it does help. It does cool them down and reduce the inflammation a bit. It definitely does help me. Anyway, up at the top of those hills were these really peculiar, I mean perfect circles in the rock. Some of them maybe just about that deep, some of them a bit deeper, and most of them with a fairly flat bottom, but one in particular had an absolute pancake flat bottom to it. And I think even to this day, I think they still puzzle people as to how they're made, and you see lots of theories online about how it's wind or it's water or whatever, but it's on top of a hill, you know, that was subject to glaciation and everything, so it's I think that means it's post-glacial, otherwise they wouldn't have they'd have gone by now. They would have been sort of eroded out of existence. But then people call them potholes, but that's not where they are, because potholes are what you get somewhere like this, or you get down at the Punch Bowl at the Linn of Dee. You get a hole in the rocks that, you know, eddies form underneath the water, and then rocks get caught and they chisel out holes, you know, big potholes where, you know, the force of water, erosion, potholes. But I think these are called panholes because they're flat-bottomed, and other people call them weathering pits. And I have seen another name for them. They're called, I think the G is silent, called namas, which is an Aboriginal word, G-N-A-M-M-A-S. There's lots of study of them in Australia, these holes. Holes in the rock, and you're sort of tempted to think, well, it's, you know, it's weathering of some sort, but you think, what on earth can make it that perfect circle? But reading up on them, it does seem to be, the consensus seems to be that it's a combination of having just the right amount of the year where they're wet and just amount of the time of the year where they're dry. And what it starts off with just like a very, very slight indentation in the rock where water collects and pools, and then you get the thing, you know, rock dissolves in water. You get chemical breakdowns in water in solution. So eventually you get sort of chemical erosion that forms, and then you get freezing and thawing, and it means that, because I don't quite understand how it makes this perfect circle, but it's essentially because of chemical weathering and then water and evaporation. Apparently it wouldn't happen if it was really dry all the time or really wet all the time. You need a combination of wet and dry, and it's quite common in granite supposedly, and sandstone and things like that. So, but because when the granite gets broken down, it by weathering like that, by, you know, in water, if the water's slightly acidic, I think, and things like that, you know, it breaks down. But the quartz crystals in granite last longer than anything else, so you get at the bottom of these pans, you get lots of detritus, lots of crystals of quartz. I think you get feldspar as well, but certainly mostly quartz, and that was certainly evident up there. You had, you know, lots of granules at the bottom, you know, big thick granules, proper granity quartz crystals at the bottom. Wind is a factor. Wind doesn't sculpt it, but if wind slams something into something else, then it can be. But from what I've read about them, the wind is important because it blows all that detritus, all the sort of the eroded sediment and crystals out. So it empties the pans, and then the water can sort of work its magic on, you know, freshly exposed rock or something. But you get some of them where the walls are sort of uniform all the way around, but you get sort of slight lips at one point where they usually it's often where wind blows the water over the edge, and gradually that means it erodes that lip, like in a saucepan, you know, you've got a little lip that starts to form, and the more it erodes, the more it's like an overflow, I suppose, and that produces chemical weathering and then erodes it. And that was evident up there. You had one of these pot things which had a very distinctive lip on it. I believe that's what it is. I don't understand it myself. I'm not a geomorphologist or even a geologist, just very enthusiastic about these things. But I've seen them on top of, is it Craigmore, that Corbett that's over by Bynack Moor. the lower one next to Sgor Mor, you get them on the top of there as well. But it's really puzzling because they're up high, and the first thing you think of, well, it must be water. It must have been stones sort of churning around in water in glacial melt or something. But apparently no, it's not. It's chemical weathering and freeze thaw. There you go. But I really wanted to tell you this. I wanted to tell you all this while I was up there. But it was so bloody windy. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, and you wouldn't have heard me even with the microphone. So hopefully that all made sense, somewhat. And because I've been talking to you for the last few minutes, I've forgotten how cold my feet are. They've been in about 10 minutes now. Makes it sound like I'm cooking them. It's a funny thing being back here. And finding myself looking forward to summer. I mean, I've never been able to say that. I mean, maybe when I was a kid, when that's just what you did. You look forward to summer. But in certainly my adult life, teenage years onwards, because of suffering hay fever and everything else, and burning and just hating the humidity and everything about summer really, and the insects, I've dreaded it. But this year is the first time in my life, I can say quite seriously and honestly, that it's the first time in my life I'm looking forward to summer. Because last year, being here and fully appreciating it, summer in a beautiful place, but not really getting hay fever up here. But then discovering things like this and swimming for the first time in however many years it was, I can't remember, was it 17, 18 years? I just can't wait. I'm genuinely excited about having summer for a change, which is a really big change for me, a big deal, because I'm Mr. Winter. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to these pools warming up. I'll be able to go swimming. I think the latest I went swimming last year was September, after we'd had a few frosts, and that was cold. It was really, really cold, and it really scared me how quickly your body gets used to it, and you can just sort of sit there in a pool, sat on the bottom with your head poking out and thinking, this feels all right. And I wondered, at what point will your body tell you should really get out now, or do you just not realise that you've got that cold? So I got out before I felt cold, and I think that's the thing to do. But that's a bit scary, that you can feel so comfortable when the water's 10 degrees or something. It's not right. But I haven't got a wetsuit or anything. I don't think I'd go in this sort of weather. It's still really cold. I'm still learning. It's just this perfect chair, this perfect seat, and the wind's coming over the top. Really nice way to finish. Very satisfying walk, really nice. It's a very simple, straightforward walk back now to Linn of Dee. Just about 5 minutes down there, you get to White Bridge, and then that's it. It's about 50 minutes walk back to Linn of Dee. Yeah, I know I haven't done many blogs lately. I think the last one was Benvironment, wasn't it, in January? So apologies. Hopefully less is more where blogs are concerned. But thank you for coming along. I've really enjoyed the walk. I've really enjoyed discovering this hill. I think professionally it's a good thing for me, because it's another part of the state I've not visited, so it helps me to advise people who ask me about places when I meet people out and about on the estate. It's nice to be able to say with confidence and describe places when people ask about them, and sort of not just say what you think it might be like up there. It's nice if you can actually say, no, I've been up there and it's like this, and the path's like this, and there's no path, and the heather's very thick, or blah 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 blah. It's nice, but a great walk and a nice way to finish. So now just an easy walk out.